The camera lights blazed like a second sun over the marble steps of the Capitol, bleaching the early morning mist that clung to the edges of Sacramento. Microphones bristled on their stands, ready to catch fire. Reporters shuffled their notes, elbows brushing, as the buzz in the press pen crescendoed. Everyone knew today wouldn't be just another political back and forth. Something bigger was building, something more than the usual spin and sound bites. And it broke with a voice like a scythe. I mean, come on, Gavin Newsom, the man's a joke, a haircut with a speechwriter, California's hollow king. Sneered Stephen Miller, his pale knuckles gripping the edge of the podium like he was trying to bend it into submission. He governs a failed state, lectures the rest of the country like a fallen preacher, and thinks charisma is a substitute for competence. Miller's voice, razor, ridged and cold, sliced through the morning air like a winter wind. The crowd of reporters froze. Cameras zoomed. Everyone knew Miller didn't pull punches, but this wasn't a jab. This was an execution. Inside the Capitol, Gavin Newsom stood at the window, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug his daughters had painted years ago. He didn't flinch as the audio from Miller's press conference echoed through his office from a muted TV. He watched it like one watches a storm roll in over the hills, with quiet clarity, a certain inevitability. He turned, glanced down at a folder marked Child Poverty Initiative, then walked to the door. I'll be down in 5, he told his aide, running a hand through his silver-threaded hair. The coffee steamed gently in his hand. The storm was outside, but he had his own lightning. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who Gavin Newsom is. Not the polished figure behind the podium, not the meme, friendly liberal firebrand Twitter loves to quote. Gavin grew up in the echo of pain. His childhood was marked by dyslexia so severe that reading aloud in class felt like standing naked in a snowstorm. His father, a respected judge, was stern and often distant. His mother worked 3 jobs to keep the family upright. Words weren't his friend, silence was. He learned early that the world respected control, charm, presentation. So he built himself piece by piece, like a man laying bricks over a fragile frame. Restaurant entrepreneur, progressive mayor, daring lieutenant governor, and finally governor of the nation's most complex, paradoxical state. But beneath the polish, he never forgot the burn of shame when he couldn't read the second paragraph of a book aloud in 3rd grade. That pain became his furnace. Miller, by contrast, wielded pain like a weapon. Born in the upper crust of Santa Monica, Stephen always knew how to twist fear into power. In college, he became infamous for combative op-eds defending anti-immigrant policies. While others studied political theory, he sharpened rhetoric like a blade. He found a home in the Trump administration, crafting speeches designed not to unite, but to punish. He saw Newsom as the soft face of elitist liberalism. He wanted a public dismantling. What neither man knew that morning was that destiny had decided this would be more than a media spat. As Newsom stepped up to the microphone just moments after Miller's barrage, there was a different air about him. Calm, yes, but beneath that calm, a slow, growing fire. I heard Stephen Miller call me a joke. He began, his voice low and measured. That I'm just a haircut, that California's a failed state. Well, Stephen, here's a joke for you. A man spends years designing policies to cage children at the border, then tries to lecture California about morality. The crowd tensed, gasps rippled. Cameras clicked like the crackle of distant lightning. But let's talk facts, Newsom continued. While Miller was holed up behind closed doors writing speeches about fear, Californians were rolling up their sleeves, building the 5th largest economy in the world, expanding healthcare access. Investing in green jobs, we housed more veterans last year than any other state. We led the nation in tech innovation and climate reform. And yes, we've had setbacks, wildfires, homelessness, skyrocketing costs, but at least we're in the arena, fighting, not hiding. A pause. He looked directly into the lens of the main CNN camera. You don't get to call someone a joke while standing on a stage built by division and cruelty. You don't get to belittle a state that takes in dreamers, that leads in clean energy, that fights for Civil rights, just because it challenges your world, Stephen, if being compassionate, if fighting for working families, if believing in science and decency makes me a joke, then I'll laugh all the way to progress. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't a clapback, it was a rebuke, a reckoning. But the real weight of that moment came not from the performance, but from the two subplots converging beneath the surface. The first was personal. Newsom's team had just completed a statewide child health initiative that would deliver free nutrition and care access to over 250,000 low-income children. The bill had barely made it through a storm of lobbyists and lawsuits. His political capital had been spent like water in a drought. When Miller insulted him, Newsom wasn't just defending himself, he was defending the people who believed in that fight. The second subplot involved Ana Morales, a 17-year-old from Fresno, whose undocumented parents had been detained during the Trump years, one of them deported, the other lost in the legal morass. Ana had become an activist, her voice shaking as she spoke at rallies, her knees knocking behind microphones. She had written to Newsom last year, thanking him for making California feel like home again. What Newsom didn't know then, but found out after his press conference, was that Ana had been watching live. In a tweet that went viral within hours, she wrote, "Stephen Miller tried to erase people like me. Gavin Newsom reminded me I still matter." And that, more than any headline or poll bump, was the moment that mattered. In the days that followed, the fallout unfolded like theater. Right-wing pundits crowed about Miller striking a nerve, while liberal circles replayed Newsom's speech like a Super Bowl highlight. But underneath the noise, something shifted. Newsom's office began receiving thousands of letters, not just from Californians, but from people across the country. Teachers, immigrants, veterans, parents of trans kids, all echoing the same sentiment: thank you for standing up. The political world spun on, as it always does, but the emotional residue of that morning stayed, and for Gavin, the weight wasn't in the accolades. It was in a moment, 2 days later, when he sat alone on his office balcony, the sun setting over the Sacramento River. He thought of his own daughters and of Ana Morales. He thought of the kids growing up scared, dyslexic, poor, or undocumented. Kids who were told they were jokes, who didn't belong. And he thought about how important it was not to win every battle, but to speak clearly in the face of cruelty. To make sure the kids who are always watching know which voices to believe. That's the lesson. Power isn't in the mic drop. It's in the echo, and that day Gavin Newsom didn't just answer an insult, he amplified something deeper. Something that couldn't be dismantled with a sneer, because jokes don't build futures, but conviction. Conviction can change the world.